I feel nauseous, believe me. Never had a lot of shit come easy. Had to work hard, struggle just to be me. Had to and what was left over I put towards my dreaming. But the only thing in life that has meaning are the things you gotta work for, believe me. Take into your hands a plan. Your own hands can land your own brand. And damn, I feel like no one takes accountability. They want the credibility, convincingly unwilling to put in the hours it takes to get some power. Don't be f***ing sour. Take a cold shower. Scream until you're louder. Work until you're prouder. And f*** all the doubters, they're just your downers. I swear to God they all let me down. I always fought.
I can tell you that 7 years after Freddie Gray, that was 2015, spring, April, May. This is 2022. Communities like Sandtown, all we saw then and now in terms of investment was a renovated Western District Police Station and a new funeral home. That's what West Baltimore got. A new police station and a new funeral home. What kind of optics are they? Was Freddie Gray any different than 1968 Baltimore riots? Dr. King's passing, killing, murder? This is the same?
No, it wasn't. I mean, I think, well, first of all, people who are being violent and burning, that's, you know, all that's the same. But the point is what was the cause and what were they attempting to register?
I always fought just to wear the crown. I'm off at these fucking clowns.
I love you.
They deserve an ounce. It's
got next.
It's only worth it if you work for it. I won't stop till they hear me now. I won't stop till I wear the crown. I swear to God they don't let me down. I always fought just to wear the crown. I'm off at these fucking clowns.
Welcome to the show. First name's Donnie, last name's Glover. We are fortunate to have with us, before we bring on our main guest, Miss Marcia Jews, the incomparable.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on. We are so excited about being here. And tonight is going to be very interesting because I'm going to tell you something. This election is really important and we need to be on top of our game. I hope you all went out and voted. You got a couple of more minutes, so make certain that you go do that.
Okay, we have one of your dear friends. You asked about him the last time we interviewed him, and he's with us, the incomparable Lieutenant Governor Michael S. Steele. How are you?
Hey, everybody. I'm good. How's it going?
I love it. I haven't seen you in forever.
I know. Surprise.
Yes, it's a wonderful thing.
LG, today, providing West wins, I would credit you.
Oh.
I would credit you because this wasn't a one-off.
Right.
This is a part of a continuum and featuring Prince George's and Baltimore.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. When you look at the glide path that we've been on and the ability to continue to move the state and to move in a direction that exposes the talents and the gifts within the Black community politically, I think it's been good. Look, I was blessed to be asked to be a part of a ticket in 2002. We had no idea where that was going to go. And here we are 20 years later, about to elect the first African-American governor of Maryland. And so if I can lay a brick on that particular road, I'm very happy to do so. Very proud of the impending accomplishment. But the work begins. The challenges are still ahead, and a new administration will do that work and begin that challenge. But it'll be very interesting and very enticing and exciting to see a lot more of the leadership of the state look like those of us on this in this conversation for the first time in almost 400 years.
That's sad. Did you say 400 years?
Yeah, when you look at the the state is what, 370 some years old. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, and but new realities are created from leaders by leaders, and we have in Anthony Brown and Wes Moore and others in the legislature an opportunity to showcase and expand the opportunity for leadership, and that's ultimately what it's about. Look, I'll have my battles with the new administration on some policy, I'm sure, but right now I stand as a proud Marylander watching history about to be made.
Is your book ready yet?
Maybe I haven't. I spend my time in hotel rooms. I'm leaving pages in every room. I got to go back and collect those things to write that book. And it'll be a fascinating book, that's for sure.
Oh, I'm sure.
I do have some things on my heart I'd like to share at a certain point. That's for sure.
But you've got a lot. Oh,
Boyd Rutherford.
Yes. What about Boyd?
Well, he was the second Black lieutenant governor.
Well,
and when I see him,
Republican. Well, you had Anthony Brown after me. You had Anthony, then Boyd.
On the Republican side.
Right. And on the Republican side, he's the second. He's the third African American. And now we're about to welcome an Asian American woman.
Yours were not easy shoes to follow. It wasn't as if you did not make a difference. And so Boyd had big shoes unofficially to fill.
Yeah, and a lot of it for me, I was blessed to have a governor in Bob Ehrlich who allowed me to be me, who allowed me to tackle the issues I wanted to tackle, whether it was a minority business enterprise in the state, education, even the death penalty. And so there were a number of things that afforded me an opportunity that not every lieutenant governor gets. I remember after our first session, because I had education in my portfolio, and I remember at the beginning of session going to the governor and saying, I really like to push getting a charter school bill for the state. He looked at me and he goes, okay, you go have that fight with the school board and the teachers union. I'm going to back over here and work on slots. But he let me do it, and we were successful, and we got the bill done, working with the Black Caucus, working with the teachers unions, and working with other unions in the state. So you're absolutely right. It was a grind, and it was, I had to carry a lot of the weight of being not just a Republican, but a Black Republican. So there were already suspicions.
Give me 3 things that if you could do all over again, what would they be?
I don't know if there are 3 things, but
okay.
I don't. I probably would want to. Well, that's a hard question for me because we got some good things done while I was lieutenant governor. So I can't second guess those efforts. I visited virtually all but 5. One thing I didn't get to complete was it was my goal to visit every municipality in the state, and over the course of 4 years, and I got to all of them but 5.
That's huge.
And we have 152 municipalities, so that's saying something.
I remember your visit to Douglas High School.
Oh, baby.
It was a world. It was. What I also remember was not just what you did, but there was a buzz in the streets from Election Day, where you guys hired Kermit Carter and they had those big 10-foot.
Oh my gosh!
Yes, life-sized, all over Baltimore City.
Yep.
But your commitment to Carver and the Douglas High School. That
Yeah.
it meant and means so much to us. I'll never forget that. It was a buzz in the air.
Not just Carver and Douglas, but also Coppin State University, Morgan. We
I grew up
wanted
down
to,
the street from Coppin. It looked
yeah.
like a high school growing up. And after you guys, it's a legitimate institution.
We wanted to put the state's money where its mouth was, and actually make the commitment. And then on my way out the door, I got in a fight with people because I was asking the question. I said, now that we have put the sports facility in place, we're putting the science labs in place, and we're building all these things. Now we need to fund the professorships. Now we need to put the resources at the institution. And that's when, remember, if you recall, the university system started talking, particularly with Morgan, saying, well, Morgan students can go to, they can go over to Maryland University for physics, or they can go, somewhere else. And we're like, well, no, why don't we put the program
in the school?
Yeah. So, I mean, these battles are still real battles. I don't know what the current administration's plan is to address some of these things, but they're ongoing. They're systemic. They've become institutionalized to some degree. And we've got to take seriously the opportunity, particularly as Black leaders, an opportunity to not just stand up our institutions that have served our communities historically and continue to do so, but to help white folks embrace them.
Ooh, that's a job.
And help them understand the value added a Coppin and a Morgan, a Bowie, UMES has, not just for the state, but for their communities as well.
And that's huge. And you need to be able to see people who look like you.
Yes.
So if we want to grow the next generation and we want to educate the next generation, you need to be able to have those institutions surrounding them. So you can look at Coppin up on North Avenue, and that changed the trajectory of how you see yourself if you can see that everywhere, right?
Absolutely. Oh, that is such a powerful statement, because it is so true that the identifier for particularly young Black kids growing up in neighborhoods that not necessarily tough, but just, neighborhoods that don't have resources like every other neighborhood, right? I mean, because I get sick and tired of this equation that if it's Black, it's poor. If it's poor, it's violent. And those pathologies settle on our kids in a way that does long-term damage, not to just their self-esteem, but to the community as a whole, and how others see them.
Right.
So when you look at the stories that go from Rodney King to Freddie Gray, you understand. You can see the arc of how those Black boys grew into Black men and how the system treated them. So it's one thing to talk about it. Now the question and the test for our legislature, our governor, and the citizens is, what are we willing to deconstruct the systemic institutions that have put these kids in these communities? And the one way you begin to do that is giving them something that reflects their better selves, that they see themselves in a way in which they go, that's good. So Coppin serves that purpose in that North Avenue community. Bowie serves that purpose in Prince George's County. UMES on the Eastern Shore, Morgan, all of them have this ability to showcase an end point, a beginning point, if you will, for these kids. And so we wanted to do that. We were able to do some of that. And the work still continues. And we're in a new chapter now, 20 years later.
20 years later. But in those 20 years, have we gained or lost something?
Oh, a little bit of both. Unfortunately, I probably lost a little bit more than we've gained. One of the things, I heard a lot of talk in this campaign about Baltimore. And the more I hear people talk about Baltimore, the more I realize they really don't understand Baltimore. They don't get Baltimore. They just don't. And I think sometimes some of the people who are elected from Baltimore don't get Baltimore.
It's a special place.
It is. It has a unique history. As someone who grew up in the world's greatest municipality, Washington, D.C., I get the connection to Baltimore in a very unique way, because Baltimore and Washington City, Washington, D.C., the people, the neighborhoods, the communities, very similar.
Yes.
LG, am I supposed to fight you right now? I mean, I still think Baltimore's the greatest municipality.
You can. I get it. Look, brother, I get it. I totally.
It's on. It's on.
That's what makes them both so special, because they've been powerful symbols of Black political and professional growth and power. And I don't think people really understand how those roots grow, and what's required to revitalize them and nourish them. I remember getting into some conversations with Mayor Williams when I was lieutenant governor, and one of the things I was concerned about was, okay, I appreciate your idea of gentrifying Washington, but what you gonna do to my mama? What's gonna happen in my neighborhood of Petworth where I grew up? Having the same conversation when I chaired the redevelopment committee for Baltimore when Johns Hopkins was looking to expand. And I remember sitting and watching the plans. I was a chairman of this committee, and I asked them, I said, okay, this is great. I love the plan and the vision, but what are you doing with the grandmother who's lived in that row house in that neighborhood for the last 50 years? And so we don't really appreciate the linkage in the history necessarily all the time, which is why those from those neighborhoods and those communities have to be vigilant about protecting them. Gentrification, in whatever form it may come, may be fine. We love the economy. You love to see the Starbucks show up, but I don't want to push a well-established Black family out of its home just to get a Starbucks.
Right. We've lost a lot of those. I'm over here in East Baltimore,
Yep.
and looking at acres of land which actually represented homes of Black people who have been there at the turn of the century.
Right.
And so here we are, and how do you replace that? And what is it? What are those roots that you can put in there now? And how do we then take back some of that land, or to build for the people who are coming up, for those next generations that we need to populate those communities?
And that's exactly right, Marcia. And what it says to me is that we can do both. It doesn't have to be a zero-sum proposition.
Right.
Because that grandmother has a child, and that child has a child. So there's generational opportunities here to not just establish or reestablish, but to allow some opportunities for growth for those families in those communities. Yeah, kids grow up and they move away. That's true. But a lot of kids don't necessarily want to do that. And they stay close by and they stay connected. We still have our family home where my parents live in Petworth, D.C. That matters to me. And it matters what happens in that neighborhood to make sure that they can stay there. And that's no different from a Washingtonian or Baltimorean when it comes to that sense of community. So we'll see where we turn this chapter. We're starting a new chapter in Maryland with new leadership. Larry Hogan has been a phenomenally good governor in so many ways, and has tried.
There would be no Larry Hogan if it were not for you and your teammate. I've been picturing a room with Lieutenant Governor Michael Steele, Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford, Lieutenant Governor, now Attorney General, soon to be, Anthony Brown, and a Wes Moore. I want to see what a room with you four in it looks like.
Oh, that's huge. That's huge.
Well, that may happen on inauguration if I get an invitation. So we'll see.
How could they not invite you? And then
that's right.
The interrelationship.
Surprised.
That's being petty. And Boyd, you're both from DC.
Y'all
And
funny.
so that's a plus for Baltimore.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
both having Prince George's, I mean, you've seen everything in DC. You've seen urban. So to have you running the state, I think we get more. I think Baltimore gets more understanding. I love DC. Many of us love DC.
Oh yeah. No, but I have a lot of hope for Baltimore's immediate future. I mean, everybody talks about the future like, oh, way down. No, I'm talking about in the next 10, 12, 24 months, how the incoming governor, works with the mayor of Baltimore, how the mayor works with the city council, the president of the city council, how the business community understands revitalization is not the removal of families and pushing out so you can bring white money into the neighborhood, because there's some black money that can be invested as well. It's finding that space and that balance to allow for that history to reemerge, obviously, but also for the new stuff to take hold and to see that influence and that vision come to life for a city like Baltimore. I remember walking down, I don't know, you and I may have talked about this a long time ago, Donnie, but I remember we were looking at part of our economic development. I was very fixated on creating a gateway for Baltimore. And North Avenue for me was just, it's the gate. You go to a certain point and you're just looking straight down, right straight to the harbor almost. I mean, it's just like that vision. And I was standing there with David Cordish. And I was talking to David. I said, David, here's the deal, dude. We get a bunch of the business guys. We get the political reps in from this area. We get the business leaders here. We get schools and community leaders, and we share this vision of how we create this gateway up and down North Avenue. What was the theater? The old theater that was
at North and Charles.
Yes.
It's
You
church
have
now or something.
You have all these great old structures, a lot of rich history. Recognizing Baltimore was part of the Chitlin circuit for a lot of the great acts that came that went up to New York and around the country. We were part of so much history. And I think people kind of lose sight of that piece of her story. And, I think it's that kind of vision and that kind of opportunity that is there for the city. And the opportunities need to be taken advantage of. The work
Parkway.
Yes. Yeah. So, it's a new day. We'll see. A new mayor who's been in the room for a little bit more than a moment now, and we've had some rough patches for the city for sure. Hopefully, with the new administration and new opportunities, Baltimore over the next 3-4 years just has a whole brand new revitalization. That is what we see in Atlanta, what we've seen in parts of Chicago, what we've seen even in places like New York, where our communities have found, for example, in Harlem, some fresh steps.
Yes. But with that comes some pain too, having lived in Harlem and gone through that transition where all of the things that we thought as a people we were able to hold on to, the history that was there, and gentrification just wiped out so many of our businesses. And the same thing is happening in DC as well as Baltimore. That has not changed. And I'm saying that because it's personal with me. It happened to me. I lost my business, couldn't hold on. You can't hold on. So I'm not speaking for some aberrant kind of concept. I actually lived it and watched it go down the tubes trying to hold on. And we have to really talk about that and think about that, of how we're going to salvage our businesses in communities that are in those areas that where they want to deal with the sprawl, where they want to take over. You've got so many boarded up houses throughout this city, and they're now being taken over 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 of them blocks at a
Yeah.
time.
Well, that's how it happens.
That's how it happens. But how
Yeah.
do we support our community through that transition, opposed to allowing these corporate and these individuals who do not look like us are able to make those moves?
Well, it starts, I think, with a lot of early and recurring investment in the educational institutions that that house young Black men and women, that allows them to get on that pathway to creating legacy wealth, which is something that I've always advocated for, because it's an essential ingredient to how wealth is sustained generation after generation. And so if you want to be serious about creating that kind of momentum as you described it, Marsha, then it's got to be one where educationally it's reinforced. The business community is behind it. Certainly government services and operations are there. Incentives are created through the legislature and the city council to cement in those opportunities. And then what you're looking at is, instead of the next generation looking how to get out of Baltimore, where else to move to besides here, they see their future there, having grown up there, having lived there, worked there, been educated there. They now want to make that investment there. Likewise, also incentives for our seniors. When you get to the point where you retire, I'd like to retire near the grandkids. Create the incentive for our seniors when they reach retirement to stay, and not retire to Delmarva or further north or south, but make that investment in their kids who are now making that investment by staying there. So there are all these little pieces. If we step back and look at what can be done in a city like Baltimore, you see a lot of really good strategies and a lot of enormously important opportunities. And again, turning the page, keeping that metaphor going, I think with this turn of the page, we have an opportunity to do that. I only hope people take advantage of it.
Where do you see the Republican Party in Maryland going?
They got work to do. They nominated an attorney general candidate and a gubernatorial candidate who are wholly unelectable. And you don't go from a Larry Hogan, a Bob Ehrlich and a Larry Hogan to Dan Cox. I'm sorry. That tells me you're not serious. That tells me you care more about party than the state. You care more about, lesser things of value politically than actually continuing on the governing opportunities that the previous Republican administration, Larry Hogan's administration, provided. Worked well with Democrats, even though outnumbered in the legislature, outnumbered by the number of voters, Democratic voters, 2-1, still managed to deliver services, provide, again, not without frustrations, not without vetoes, not without the typical rankering, politically, but still was able to do things that he'll leave office with a 67% job approval. All right.
In the 20 years I've known you, I have never known you to be anything but an intelligent Black man.
I appreciate that. Thank
Although I'm a Democrat, I learned a lot, and I'm so grateful, especially when I look at Coppin State, when I look at the work that Hogan has built on top of that since then. As you mentioned, North Avenue, we're in a $3 million building right here in the 2100 block of West North Avenue right now. We're in the Imad's Center. They manufacture clothing. But this is the question. I set the table, so let me just roll out the question.
Sure.
Herschel Walker.
Well, I've not been shy in my expression of disappointment in the party nominating him. He is wholly unacceptable as a candidate. If I were a county chairman or if I was state chairman, certainly if I were national chairman, would not have been advocating for Herschel.
I
to
never saw
be the
you
nominee.
act like him, ever.
Yeah.
Never.
Normal people don't do that.
Yeah. And so there are issues there that I think have been taken advantage of politically. You know, we don't know how the vote's going to turn out in Georgia tonight, but I think a lot of the closeness of that ballot, particularly after having talked to some people in Georgia, tells me two things. One is, you know, Reverend Warnock will likely and Herschel will likely have a runoff, so they'll probably have a runoff there. But two, for a lot of that vote, certainly for Herschel, it's about the party and you know, winning that Senate seat as opposed to the dignity of the man who's going to be in that seat.
Your
ability to function as a senator.
Because it's a puppet. He's a puppet, and so they can pull the strings and tell him what to do. He doesn't have the capacity.
It's just it is the worst form of cynical politics for me, because there were better qualified, better candidates running in that primary, and but for Donald Trump's endorsement, which was came out of nowhere, last minute, disrupted the flow of that primary, you would have had a better race. A candidate I think Republicans could get behind, but that's again, that's the cynicism of politics when it goes down that road and you wind up with these kinds of races. And we see that now with election deniers across the country in places like Pennsylvania and Arizona, who stand on the verge of winning their campaigns. And what does that mean for the country? What does that mean for the rest of us when we get into a big presidential election in 24 months, that, you know, now everyone is running around and people are threatening violence and saying that we're going to make sure no Republican ever loses another election. You don't get to make that choice as an individual elected official. You don't get to make that choice as an election board. Voters do. And you've got to respect and honor the ballot box, and to the extent that they don't, they should not be elected.
But you know, the behavior is such that it's reminiscent of years ago in the 60s, and these vigilantes and their little white robes are back in position. And how do we change that tide? Because it is running rampant across this country.
It's a hard question, because it really rests with individuals. It rests with each individual citizen to decide whether or not they still love this country enough to fight for, whether or not they love the experimental concept of democracy that we've tried to forge since 1776. Certainly since 1789, when we, said this is our Constitution and these are the things we value. And yes, none of us we weren't thought of as that document was being written, but it's now ours, and we own it as much as any other person standing on this soil. And so, as we have done in the past, to preserve liberty and freedom for others, we now have to look to preserve that for ourselves.
Yes.
And that's going to be the test beginning tonight, because the next 2, maybe 3 election cycles are going to be torturous. They're going to be difficult, and they're going to require a lot of citizens to think very carefully about the kind of men and women they put forward to represent the rest of us, all of us. And so it begins tonight. We'll see how it goes. I was going to say, make sure
how do you stay
nearby.
Keep it in prayer, child. Keep it in prayer.
How do you stay so optimistic? After 20 years, you seem even more optimistic than when you began as lieutenant governor.
I just have a love for the idea of service. I mean, you guys know I wanted to be a priest, so that animates still a lot of my heart. That sense of calling and responsibility you have to your neighbor. Um,
But you
and
can have a woman. You can't have a girlfriend if you're a priest, right? You can't have a
well,
wife, right?
that's a different conversation. Yeah, you're right.
That's a
Why you got
problem.
to bring on?
The brothers
You
could have gone
already
right to the
know.
bottom line.
You
It was like,
already
okay,
know.
you can't
You
have a
already
wife,
know.
right? Where's your girlfriend? That was like when I told my mom is a convert to Catholicism. And when I told her, and I'm first generation Catholic, and when I told her that I was going to be a priest, I wanted to be a priest, she looked at me and she said, "You can still have grandkids, right?" I went, "No,
Right. What you doing?
that's not how it works." So I had to have a long conversation. She was none too happy. But then when I told her 3 years later that I was leaving the seminary and coming home, she was like, "Okay, good."
Thank you. Right?
Good,
Applause, applause.
good old
Oh,
Southern
that's
Baptist
hilarious.
woman. That part of her
Yes.
never
She
left.
wasn't
Never
hearing
left.
that. She wasn't hearing that.
Not at
I
all.
don't think so.
Not at all.
LG, they say you know you have the Holy Spirit when you help empower others. I can think of a few names, but William Hobson from Ice Tech, Zachary McDaniels,
Yep.
who's now down at the Murphy firm. You touched and you passed the ball, and we thank you. Coppin, we know it is where it is today because it's a part of a continuum.
Yeah.
Yes.
We wouldn't have this conversation, I don't think, about a Westmore had some of us not taken hits. You know, they swung on me back in 02.
Oh, I
They
know.
swung on me in 14.
I know.
But I saw Baltimore and Prince George's working together.
And that's what it's all about. That's what
Mhm.
it's all about. I know a lot of people like to exploit that rivalry between our two great cities, and county. But I think the reality of it is it doesn't happen unless we pull in the same direction. It doesn't work unless we circle the wagons around our issues and our interests to protect those in the legislature, to protect those in the business community. And so, guys like Zach and so many others were a big part of helping me form my understanding about this great city of Baltimore, to have a stronger affection for it, and just appreciate the gift that it is and it has been and will be. And so I think there's a lot there are a lot of shoulders that I stand on in my public service, and I am grateful for that. And particularly individuals like yourself. I mean, Marsha, I'll tell you, used to have some conversations with Donnie who helped me understand a little bit more of that Baltimore vibe. And he was very forthright, and he was always, particularly when we were trying to move the needle. You have brothers like Donnie who, are largely unsung in politics, but they are held up high in the community because that's the voice they represent, and they share that voice in a way that makes a difference if those leaders want to listen. You can never tell me you didn't know, because guys like Donnie, individuals like you, Marsha, are out here telling folks every day, this is what it is, this is what you need to do.
It's the truth. But the thing I think is a statement that has stayed with me in looking across the landscape, and it's together we stand.
Yep.
Divided we fall.
It's true. It's true.
And if we don't, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and we've seen examples of that countless times, where we have not, when we've not stood together, we've fallen. And the thing is, the fall is a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it's not just falling. It really is. You land hard. And so our goal should be to try to avoid as much of that as possible, and working together. There are a lot of good things that are happening in Prince George's, that are happening in Baltimore City. And we'll see how the next steps are taken as we begin with new leadership in the state beginning next year.
Okay, before you go, you got to tell us who is the next Michael Steele.
Mm,
In terms of what?
everything.
What, the Republicans are just going to go away in Maryland? They can't.
Look, that's on them. I don't know. I've been working as hard as I can to help my party move off of stupid, to get away from falling off the cliff willingly, and to rediscover those Lincoln-esque values that animated my passions when I was a young man, and to share that as best we can with the next generation. We're not there yet. And we'll see if we get there. I'll continue to try. As I told a friend of mine this morning, I said, like, I'm a Motel 6 Republican. Someone's got to keep the lights on. I try my best, but they keep shooting that bad boy out. So at some point, you realize they just don't want the light on. And you move on.
I got to ask you this in front of him. Would you agree that because of the efforts of LG, Steele, and others, we as a Black community are better off?
Oh yeah, because you have to have people who look like you, who understand what you see and what you want to do. And the reality is I think that too often first of all, I was a Republican before I moved here, living in Bethesda. And so then, yeah, I was working with the Marine Corps. I was a Republican child. I was making that money and I was doing whatever I needed to do. So all that. But the reality is that
breaking news.
And so what is really important to me is, how do we as a people identify it? And at this point, I don't want to hear Republican. I don't want to hear Independent. I don't want to hear Democrat. I want people who are committed to affecting change to the lives of the citizens that live in these cities and in these counties and in this country. And until we can deal with the fact that there are people who look like us, who are not able to do what they need to do, their children aren't able to do, and we can't go, we can't grow, if we keep dealing with this racism in 2022. We have to get past this to affect change. We have to stop playing these games. And it didn't help that we had somebody in the White House whose vision of what this country looks like doesn't look like us.
Yeah.
And so until we can deal with and be honest about it and put the people in place that need to be in place, no matter what, you have to be able to deal with the citizens of the United States of America, period.
You got to deal with this as you find us, not as you want us to be.
Thank you. Say it again.
That's it. Because that's who we've always been.
And that's real.
All right, guys, I've got to go get my head ready for what's going to be a wild night of national politics. But I think we'll be all right in Maryland. So
all right.
Now, I just want to tell you, I'm really loving the tie.
Thank you, bro.
And I'm loving the backdrop. And strangely, what comes to mind for some reason was your visit to Dan Brothers shoe store.
What?
Oh my gosh.
What?
That was it's the return of the skins. The
those alligators.
You wouldn't understand.
Yeah, I don't. I'll just be quiet. I'll just sit over here.
Well, she's taken men shopping before. She knows how to dress us.
That's good. This is good. We need it.
Oh, no question. Boyd's, Philadelphia. I don't know if they're still there or not.
LG, thank you so much.
Thank you guys very much. Happy Election Day. For those of you who have not voted yet, go vote.
Yes, it's still time.
Don't take any of it for granted. Even if your candidate may be way ahead, exercise the franchise, because your grandmama, your granddaddy, your cousin, Pookie, whoever did something to help
and everybody.
Bring that about.
That's right, Larry Young.
We appreciate you, big brother.
Thank you. It's good seeing you.
That's so good to see you, Marsha. Behave yourself now.
No.
No fun in that.
No fun in that.
So, Marsha, you're going to tell me about this Republican thing.
Oh, yeah, child. I went through that phase. I was telling you, I was setting up those.
No, Marsha, you have literally cussed me out. And I can't believe that you have been undercover. You know, that's like a Klan.
It wasn't undercover. That was back then.
You have given me Republican grief.
Yes, because I
And
learned
you've been a
something from it.
Republican all along. That's
Not
just
all along.
hypocritical.
No, 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 not all along. So when I got through working over there and had that experience, I changed all of that when I moved to Baltimore. So until then, I was Republican, and I moved back here. I moved here and I switched to Democrat.
Okay,
Period.
so any predictions for tonight? Did you go through the ballot questions? Did you notice that Fox, they want you to vote against question K, and they put out signs in the Black community that usurped the African liberation colors, red, black, green. Fox, the racists, put out signs with red, black, and green. Vote against question K. Vote for
Well,
it.
but he put over $500,000 investment into that.
I don't care.
$500,000. So that question K must be awfully important to them for them to make that kind of an investment, which is frightening to me. That here is a public television community or whatever it is, broadcast that would spend that. What is K, and why was K so important to the owner of Fox and whatever the name of their corporation?
Well, we know them. The troubling part is the way they were able to pull in certain Black activists to support this as if they are our friends. And the Black activists were so excited to be on television, to me, that they missed the whole point.
Right.
If anybody else would have suggested term limits, I'd be all for it. But them, no, they don't get to call any shots. First of all, do they even live here?
No, they live in the county.
So you don't live here and you're trying to pass legislation on where I live.
Right, because
that's
they
just
can.
A basic common sense question I don't think our activists ask themselves before signing up for that chicanery.
Well, because there was also some money was sent there too, I'm sure. That's why they were spending it.
Oh, so the Black activists got paid.
They were spending it. Oh, you don't think that they didn't get paid? That's how you took them. You know, when they put that little, they dangle. What do they dangle the little money to be hanging off the little money. They have a little stick with the dangle so that you can just pull it off. Let me pull it off the stick.
I bet you they didn't get any money.
Oh, so you think they did it for what? For what reason? They did it. They had to get something.
Ego and stupidity.
Ego to be on television, is that it? So you get to be on TV?
Yes.
And so I just think that it was also about the money, and they took advantage of the fact that they had an opportunity to ask and receive the number that they threw out.
I saw some thirsty people. Thirsty.
It's shameful. It's shameful.
So let's put in a plug
for
Dr.
T.
Dr. T.
Taborn in the metaverse. Talk about the metaverse.
Well, first of all, we're here in our new studio and we still have some work to do, but I am loving this backdrop of yours. I mean, you have truly stepped your game up.
Let me move over here. You like that?
See. I mean, before, well, we're not going to talk about your backdrop before.
I don't even know what it was, for real.
I remember what it was.
Wafflehead Willie and Company.
It looks really, really nice. I'd also have to thank you for introducing me to Fiverr.
Yes, perfect.
Fiverr is the bomb.
.com.
If you've been paying people an exorbitant amount of money to fix your web issues and the issue is still not fixed, in the words of Marsha Jews, boo-boo, you need to try Fiverr. Your problem will be fixed tomorrow, by tomorrow.
Fiverr.
And your Black web designer will be still giving you excuses. I said it. I support Black business, but I don't support stupidity.
Well, people have to do what they say they're going to do. That,
And you have
the
to stay up
commitment.
on
Mhm.
your craft.
Yes, and be in the 21st century. I think that part of our challenge is that, too often, some of us we're trying to do so many different things, and we don't have the support, and we haven't the funding to be able to bring additional people, because then we're working on one thing, but we don't have enough arms to go and do something else. We don't have the money to pay somebody else to come to do, so it's like this horrible, what is it, like you're on a track. You just keep running and
A
running, running.
treadmill.
Treadmill. You keep running on the treadmill, and it's really hard. And so, I think there almost needs to be a conference of small businesses to just sit down and talk about the issues and how we can really change them. I want to support people who look like me. I do, because other people support their people.
And how
And
about this? People come from overseas to set up shop in our community, don't speak a lick of English, and we lined up in there buying their food.
yes, and we
Like
don't
we don't
care.
know how to cook. Is it that we only cook on holidays?
I think that too often we get caught in trying something new, but not understanding that we haven't even supported what's already there. And so, if we were to sit down and look at you, speaking of restaurants, you sit down and you talk about how many Black restaurants there are, and how often do we actually support them? How often do we go there because we know that they are a Black business, versus going to another business that's owned by a different ethnic community? And because it has a cute name and a cute little table sign, we want to be there, opposed to supporting and helping to build a community within our own community.
Like Kevin Brown.
Mhm.
Kevin hosted an event a couple of weeks ago for an artist lady,
Yes.
and it was very beautiful.
Hmm.
This was beyond his regular hours, and that's what
Hmm.
made it even more special to me, because I know he prefers earlier events. But this was on a Saturday, full of Black women,
Hmm.
gorgeous. Everything was beautiful, and he had the opportunity to make money. A Black business was featured in an otherwise space marked by non-Blacks right on North Avenue. So,
Right.
and then also downtown Kevin Brown was Baltimore's premier top Black journalist before I
Yes.
even came on the scene.
Yeah. He's a bad brother. And he's been there,
A
done that,
bad brother.
and paved the way, opened up doors that were closed and locked. And he went through it on a couple of levels, So, you sit
What
down
I
and you
like
look at
about him is
that,
that he's going to tell you the truth regardless.
whether you want to hear it or not, and then sashay on off. And I think so. One of the things that we do look at is just
Yes,
even
he
on that,
does.
right? Just looking at North Avenue, if we were to sit down and say, what's the downtown? St. Paul. So if you look on the corner of St. Paul and North Avenue, there's a boarded up building across from the church and the rental. Kevin and I wanted to do something with that building. That building is owned by the church, or it was. I don't know if it still is. And the man would not rent it to us. Now it's all boarded up.
He should
A Black
be
man.
the builder. He should be forced to do something, or it should be taken from him,
It's shameful.
because
But
you're contributing to the delinquency of the buildings. We have enough vacants. What would they say? SHIT or get off the pot.
that's right. And but here, and I'm saying this for a reason. If we were to sit down and talk about our Blackness, right, as a community, and you talk about how we support our businesses and how we help our businesses grow and help our businesses thrive, right? If we have all these different organizations, groups, clubs, associations, whatever. Suppose we all were to sit down and do a strategic plan together about all of the people that really are trying to do business in the city of Baltimore, in these vacant buildings. Suppose we put that together and create community development organization, for lack of something else to call it, and fund all of these places that are on these major thoroughfares that we could be able to build and empower entrepreneurs.
Well, you're dealing with the institutional racism that's as much Baltimore as the Orioles,
Mm,
an institutional racism that today in 2022
right.
put up concrete blocks
Mm,
in the historic Hose Heights community to stop those older residents who have been living there in a historic community that goes back to the early 1800s. And some people in Roland Park, along with Councilwoman Odette, what's
Ramos.
her name? Bamos,
Ramos.
Damos,
Ramos.
Gamos,
Ramos.
Gamos,
Ramos. Ramos.
the lady with
Ramos.
the lady with the big forehead.
Odette Ramos.
Yeah, the one that tried to get on the city council all those years, and as soon as she gets in there, she won. She tried to stymie the Caribbean Festival parade, but now she's over there putting concrete blocks in a 100+ year community that's Black in between Hamden and Roland Park. It's called Hose Heights, named after Grandison Ho, Odette Ramos. Go to BeMoreNews.com.
What?
The news before the
For
news,
the news.
where we
We
uncover
heard
the
it.
truth. And I want you to know, we have a new logo, so we got to change this thing up here. But Black USA, we have a new logo, and it has the tagline that you ordered, that you mandated, that you threatened us with, the voice of our people.
Yes. And it's beautiful.
Marsha's been on sabbatical from Black USA. I think she was over there on BlackUSA.News, and they kicked her. They kicked her off, and so she's back here in STEM City where she belongs. No, Marsha and I just need a little air sometimes. If you see us cussing, you know what it's about. But don't you get in the middle of it, because I pity the fool.
At all. From either
Catalina
way.
Bird, since I've last spoken with you, she, Zane Cypress, and Dale Terrell have formed a Druid Hill Park partnership, and she mentioned you to me, how you have coached and mentored and befriended her through this, the most dynamic thing she's done to date.
Yeah, I'm really proud of her. It's huge.
And she's a Pisces like you.
Yes, she is. But
you know, my daughter's a Pisces.
I know. See, we love that. My grandson's a Pisces. I'm a Pisces. We loving people.
Okay, so in other news,
what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do about?
And Michael Haney said hello to you also. Michael Haney.
Hey,
we have
Michael
new
Haney.
members of the team. Quandra Gaines. You've not met Quandra.
Okay.
But she knows you. She does Political Cipher, and it'll be on. She's coming back on today. But her show is typically on Wednesday. Are you going to the victory? And the word is.
The word.
I heard.
You heard.
That you left your domicile, that you went out in the middle of the pandemic. I heard you help people. How did we only have a minute, but oh, never mind. We'll get to it the next time. You escaped. We're so glad you escaped.
I actually was down in the festival over Saturday and Sunday in Fells Point with Lauren Cornish. He has his gallery open, and I was down there supporting my client.
Well, now that you're back, Mama, there's Dad.
Hey.
And both of you are Pisces.
Isn't that something? But we love you anyway.
I know that.
All right.
So we're going to get out of here. We'll be back 4 o'clock. We're going to be doing this broadcast Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. right here from the EMARD Center at 2132 West North Avenue. It's an attempt that they offered us space. And so these are the beginning steps to get to get involved. There's Quandra. I told you they're watching.
I love it. I love it. All right.
And there's a
Well,
big Notre Dame game coming up. What you didn't tell me about Notre Dame Navy is that they move it to different
oh,
places.
you're
It's
talking
never
about
in
in
the,
from South Bend, Indiana.
yeah, it's never
Yeah,
there. They move it around the country and it's used for recruiting. I didn't know that. It's used for recruitment.
I don't doubt it because they're about getting that money. And
Okay.
they have taken over the east side of South Bend, Indiana. That's my hometown, y'all. But and live down the street and around the corner from them. And they are serious about land. They are about the
Yeah,
land.
your hair is
Just
really
think,
pretty, Marcia.
oh, thank you. It's very
It's real,
gray.
and it's yours.
It's all mine and it's all gray. Still standing, brother.
Love you, Marcia.
I love you much. Take
Vote
care.
if you haven't. We'll see you tomorrow.
Please vote. Oh, wait. Let me just say this. When I voted. I went to the election place up here. There are some questions on those ballots that you really need to pay attention to. They're written and they're using big long words and they're big long sentences with semicolons. And you need to really make sure that you understand what you're reading. And you have to keep the machines are different. Everything is different in there and how they're processing you and moving you from one location to another. Just be attentive. Make sure you pay attention and ask questions and make them give you an answer, because that was bigger. That was huge for me. That was really huge because you hit one button, you see everything, and then you hit it again, but then it says more. And then, I mean, there are all these things, and they don't send you information to tell you that all of these ballots have changed and how you're supposed to go and vote. So just please take your time. Don't rush to make certain that you understand what you're voting for and how to get to the next page so you don't mess up, and just call the people over, because I did. Come on over here. And I had 2 people with me until I understood it. That's scary. That's scary.
Can't wait to see you again.
Soon come. All right.
Good
Take
evening,
care.
world.